We're talking about a few of these that are part of those a part of the frameworks: the climate responsive architecture, net zero energy buildings, resilient regenerative design, urban planning for environmental equity, and the intersection of technology and
Marco, ¿puedes decir algo
sustainability.
a él? Excellent. So the agenda, generally, we're going to do an introduction to our firms and what we do. We're going to talk about the framework for design excellence and its metrics and our journey, and also what's next for all of us as we continue this journey.
So, just going through.
Perfect. Thank you. So a little bit about us. Again, we started in 2010, and we are working out of a historic masonry building that we bought in 2018, and we use as a lab. So we're practicing what we preach. We converted this historic building to a net zero or near net zero passive house certified building. And so we actually produce 89% of the energy that we consume. So we're very happy about that. We are striving to have all electric buildings, and right now are opening a nature-based slate school that's all electric. And our signatories of the 2030 challenge. And we really think that the 2030 challenge works sort of hand in hand with the frameworks. A little bit about our people. We have 11 people that are working with us. We also have a very diverse team, and also work in the arena of trying to encourage young architects through a pipeline. A little bit about our projects. The first few projects that we started on in our office are really the markets that we work in today, which are education, multifamily housing, commercial, and starting to do some larger scale urban planning and feasibility projects.
Excellent. Flow Design Architects. So these images really make me smile whenever I look at them, because it reminds us of what we are all about. A very diverse ecosystem of aspiring architects, and our focus really is to change that pipeline, to introduce others to what we thought was a misfit for me, for instance, as a career, and make sure that they all make it and succeed within this profession. So we go to preschools, high schools, mid schools, college, and offer sessions. Today, actually, we're offering a session within an hour or so at a charter school nearby, where we're going to be talking about architecture and design, and how exciting and fun it is, because change begins early, and that's the way to go. The team has grown much more than what I ever thought it was going to grow. So we were founded all the way back in 2017. The pandemic somehow made us grow even more, because we offer a lot of services to the residential market, and that market started booming when it comes to single, two-family renovations and things like that. And now we have two offices. So there's a crew here in Salem, Massachusetts, and another crew of 3 that we have all the way back in the Dominican Republic, which is where I'm from. And also that's part of giving back. That's part of giving opportunities, because it turns out that we have a lot of talent that really needs opportunities there. And we thought, well, how can we walk the walk and talk the talk, not just in the United States, but also across the borders, which is awesome. Projects are very diverse, not just because of the diversity of the team that we have, which we pride so much on, but the clients that we attract too. The clients that we attract feel very welcomed with us. They feel a lot of empathy and connections with us. They relate to our journeys here, and that makes for a really good ingredient for diversity, and for every client, as they grow throughout their own projects. They hire us for the first one, and they do another project. We also grow with them. So there's a client that we always talk about that started with 1 daycare. She has about 8 daycares right now. We've been the architects for all of them, and we've been growing with her throughout her journey. So very diverse kind of work: historic work, residential work, multifamily, residential, and affordable housing. And now, is everybody ready to go on this road, this trip through the framework for design excellence? Karen's gonna take it away and show us her path and how she's achieved all these amazing things through her journey. First, what is the framework, right? So let's talk about that. My bad. So what is the framework, right? So it's very important to clear the waters there. If you've never heard of the framework for design excellence, well, don't worry about it. We're gonna tell you a lot about it right now. Karen, tell us a little bit about these ingredients.
Sure. Well, it grew out of the the Committee on the Environment Top 10 Awards, and it is a website that is host to guidelines, resources, and what it isn't is a certification on its own. It's not a certification. It's something that you can use as architects in practice. And also, what it doesn't have are metrics. So metrics are often used with awards in different states who are using the framework for design for their award guidelines, and different states are doing different metrics. So that's actually one of the sort of interesting things about this. It doesn't have metrics of its own. So we would just like to show you sort of what these categories are, what they mean to us, but then also some of the metrics that are used by the original sort of COAT Top 10 Awards to help find some metrics for some of these.
And one thing, I want to demystify this very quickly. Think of it as ingredients, the term I mentioned before, right? So not all of these ingredients could go on the same meal. Probably some of them will have more, some of them will have less. But the point is that this is a way of holistically look at what excellence is, not just thinking about energy, but also thinking about equitable communities. And we're going to talk about each one of them. But just think of it as these are fun toolkits, ingredients that you can apply as you work throughout your projects.
So the first one, integration, and this one's a little bit nebulous because it's really how, if someone is looking broadly at all the categories together, how do they intertwine, and what is the big idea that brings them together? So one of the metrics there is actually probably the only one that has sort of a narrative. You can actually write words. Most of them are actual sort of numbers and things. But here there's the opportunity to just sort of talk about the big idea behind your project.
Excellent. And, equitable communities. And I always smile when I hear that. Finally, these terms are making it into the profession. So we all care about communities that allow all of us. It's not just for one group or for another, but thinking about everybody across the board, right? So this canon in principle thinks about that within the larger community, the larger ecosystem. And one of the metrics that it talks about is, and by the way, there are multiple metrics, as you can see in the background. There are multiple ones, but to not be too overwhelmed, you can pick a couple of these ones and start adding information about them. And this one is about how you move through space, how close, how far, how that impact of movement through your community affects the carbon footprint that you have, and how easy it is for one person of different backgrounds to move through these communities. So that all ties into metrics that you can easily measure, right? Car miles per gallon. Well, what about walking, right? So how much energy can you save throughout that, and that can add for high performance.
The next one is ecosystems. The good design mutually benefits human and non-human inhabitants. So yes, looking at humans, but also other life forms, both plant and animal. So one of the measures there, one of the metrics here with the COAT top 10 is to look at square footage on a site that is covered with native plants versus turf grass, for instance.
Design for water, right? We know that there are places that there's plenty of water, there's places that there's none. So how do we work with that? How do we ensure that good design conserves and improves the quality of water as a precious resource that we all know that. So how do we measure it? So there are ways of measuring it by the consumption of the water, looking at also different metrics for how water, rainwater, some water management, how do we recycle that water? I always talk to people at the office about how can we ensure that our faucets and our fixtures are very efficient with that water that we use. There are many ways of doing it, and there's no one perfect way. There's no one size fits all. But one thing, right? Even if you were to grab one of these metrics, you can start applying it and quantifying it in a very meaningful way.
Economy. Good design adds value for owners, occupants, community, and planet, regardless of project size and budget. So I think it's really, really important, and we try to work on this very clearly with any project, but some of them are just much more meaningful than others, of trying to create the right size, right? So what is the right size for a building? Creating flexible spaces that can be used in many ways, but then also trying to find materials that are that are less expensive. So one of the metrics here, though, is that let's look at the utilities that you're saving from right sizing or creating a smaller building. How much money are you spending on cleaning? How much are you spending on, or how much less are you using because you have really durable and low maintenance materials? So this is trying to find metrics for some of these types of concepts.
Energy, right? We all care so much about that and the cost of energy these days. So good design reduces energy and eliminates the use of energy and eliminates the dependence on fossil fuels. We all know those are not good for us, and it's not a matter of if we want to, it's a matter of by eminent, we need to get this done. We need to reduce that consumption. So we have many ways of actually reducing that. There's path to moving from the spectrum of full fossil fuel to electric. So how do we measure these things? How do we measure the different consumptions and costs of each one of them? Measuring things is giving us agencies as architects now, because we can actually quantify this and make an informed decision and help our clients make the informed decisions about the design. So these metrics, again, there are many of them and they can get overwhelming, but hey, grab a couple of these metrics, go one by one and break them down, and you're gonna see how much sustainable you can become when it comes to design for energy.
Next is well-being. So good design supports health and well-being for all people, considering physical, mental, and emotional effects on building occupants and surrounding community. So a lot of this is about lighting, daylighting, and views to nature. So here, one of the metrics is actually calculating the square footage within a building, so a percentage of your building that has good quality views. Same for operable windows. And then daylighting itself, how much of the area of a floor is actually served by daylighting, so thereby reducing energy.
Resources. We all know all of these resources that we have plenty of sometimes are diminishing every single day. So how do we, good design depends on informed material selection, balancing priorities to achieve durable, safe, and healthy projects with an equitable, sustainable supply. All of these beautiful words, you're like, how do we apply it? Well, there's a metric for them. And you can look at the percentage of construction waste. I always talk to my dad about, he's a master builder, so I'm always telling him, hey, Dad, can you please take down that brick carefully or that wood carefully, because there's a way that we can reuse it. Understanding that the most sustainable building is the building that's already there and the materials have already been harvested and used, right? So those are the most sustainable ones. So how do we measure it? That way. Reducing that amount of construction waste, figuring out how we can repurpose those, recycle those in many ways, and measuring it by percentages of each one of the different categories that we have here.
The next one, change. So every project presents a unique opportunity to apply lessons learned from previous projects and gather information to refine the design process. Within change is also the fact that you're building for flexibility and adaptability, so that we know what the next use of this particular building or particular space is. But if you create something that is flexible, it will likely last longer. So one of them here is also resilience. So how long can a building function without power? In our building, we're very happy that we have photovoltaics, but the next step to that would be let's have a battery pack in the basement, so that we could actually survive for a number of days without power whatsoever.
And it's not just, I wanted to jump in real quick. It's not just change of, the climate environment, but also the people within the buildings also change, right? So in my residential side, look at, you are very wealthy, healthy and strong today, but tomorrow you may not be. So how do we implement grab bars and systems throughout the building so that the building can still adapt and you can age in place, right? So that's another metric within here, within the lifespan of the entire building. Discovery. I love this one because in general, it's about taking those lessons learned and how we're measuring those lessons that we learned from each one of the projects. I know there are projects that you never want to remember again, but those are the ones that you should learn from the most. So taking those informed decisions, informed material decisions, and balancing those priorities to achieve durable, safe, and healthy projects with an equitable, sustainable supply chain. The only way is to taking those measures. And one of the metrics, hey, we need to do live, post-occupancy engagement. Be involved with what happens with your buildings afterwards. I had a lunch and learn yesterday here. We were talking about PVC, and I was like, some of this material I won't live long enough to know what they really do. So, but you, by tracking these things, you can pass it along to someone else within the journey, and then we're gonna have better results to understand how did it actually perform internally and externally. And that's the legacy that we leave behind. And now, now we're gonna take that journey with Karen here throughout her process. And by the way, guys, I don't want to spoil it to you, but it's mind-blowing the kinds of things that she's been doing and the entire journey. So get your pencils ready, pen and paper to take notes, because there's a lot of cool stuff.
Thank you, Darwin. So we thought we'd just talk to you about our journey from our beginnings, where I thought, I had the be-all, end-all of all certifications. I had LEED AP, right? We know that at the time that was really important, and there's so many things that have happened since then. So we want to talk a little bit about sort of our journey throughout various sort of certifications, and then how we got to the frameworks for design excellence. And then Darwin, spoiler alert, is going to be talking about how he actually really implemented it within everything in his office. So our journey began again in 2010. So I had a LEED AP designation, and was using the 3D version of Autodesk. Was called Architectural Desktop, so the 3D version of Autodesk. And by the end of the first 4 years, we then moved to Revit, as you can see on this slide. So our first projects were, and I didn't realize, Darwin, that you also have a lot of early childhood. So our first project was this early childhood school in 2010. And there we were working with Post and Beam. I was a Glulam Post and Beam. We were able to work with geothermal, and non-toxic materials were just coming into kind of the name. We actually used, low VOC paints, which right now, you can't even get some that are not low VOC. So sort of earlier in the days, trying to get the best materials that we could at the time. And we were working toward a LEED Silver. So, we know that that is a sort of all-encompassing certification. And then from there, working through the next few years with SIP panels. So we know that exterior insulation is extremely effective and efficient. So we're trying to work with SIP panels on some of our projects. So the next 3-4 years, we were working with those, and also starting to try to go all electric. So in the multifamily world, that's a little hard to do, or any either school or multifamily that needs generators, because generators still need diesel, for instance. So some of the pitfalls there. But so at the end of this first 4-year period, we went to Revit, which is more robust than AutoCAD, as we know. And so, yes, let's go to the next slide, please. From here, we started working in the sort of historic adaptive reuse, and that's very exciting, and it brings its own challenges in that we are working with interior insulation, try to maximize as much as we could there, and started to think about these concepts of community resilience. How are we creating spaces in this building? And our first building was a conversion of an historic elementary school, into affordable housing. How do we create spaces that can be used by the community? And for the community, and how can we create those spaces that are potentially places that they can gather and maybe even shelter in place? Then I guess that the third one here, the Trinity Baptist Church 2016, we're thinking of this is a building that's sort of in between two buildings, and it's trying to create a lot of spaces again for the community that is accessible. And so here it's really about creating as much as you can pack into a small building. So I think for us, we would have used, if we'd known about the frameworks, we'd be using sort of community and economy. Like, how do you create something that is very effective for the little tiny space that you have available? And then later, then we started working with a client who thought the most important part of sustainability is creating a healthy indoor air environment for their children. So we started working with the red list free materials, and and for them also water filtration was very important, and circadian lighting. So at this point, we took a moment to really discuss within the office what is it about sustainability that it means so many different things to so many different people. And we created a green building standards comparison, which is on our next slide. Darwin, please. Which at the time were the ones that we were starting to look at, that help understand the function of some of these certifications. So there's a whole building certification, which is LEED, Green Globes, and NGBS, which are more in the multifamily world. Specialized one, which are really more about energy. So Energy Star as sort of the basis, but then going really into passive house and net zero. And then a holistic approach, so not only site and energy, but also sort of operations and long-term viability, sustainability, resilience.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
Because
and then we also started working on some really interesting sort of other building types. So in 2018, we started working on an oyster farm, and how do you make that sustainable? That one would have been a perfect one for the water category here. So at the time, we were trying to figure out how do you quantify efficiency there, and in this case, where do you need to insulate your walls, and where do you not, so that you're only building what you need to build. And then right around that time, I became certified passive house consultant, and we started working with passive house principals on some housing, which is still underway, that project, and our own building. So in 2020, we started a renovation of our own building here, which is an 1816 building, and working on an interior deep energy retrofit, ultimately adding photovoltaics so that we produce our own most of our own energy, and going all electric there, and really using this as a lab to try to bring and understand these concepts that we can bring to our clients. We are now also just finishing the project on the left-hand side of the page here, which is an all-electric school, and high school, with a high-performance envelope, red list-free materials, and they are not interested in certification, right? So how do we find a system that helps guide us? And for us, part of it now is really adopting the frameworks. At the time, one last thing on that slide is that we signed the AIA Materials Pledge, which is also another sort of helpful little piece that you can that helps understand and help guide materials choices. But then we found the frameworks for design excellence, which really helped bring a holistic view to the way that we think about sustainability, in that it is not a certification of its own, but it is this sort of guiding guiding set of resources and guidelines. And then, just an interesting project at that time is a movie theater conversion to daycare, which is exterior envelope re-enveloping the exterior with insulation and EFIS on that one. So trying to bring sustainability to this completely different type of building, which is nice. What's nice is that it already has this really flat roof, so we can just put a ton of photovoltaics on the top. And then we also signed the next year the 2030 commitment, which is really trying to get to net zero with most of our projects in 2030. And that's another one that's really important to note, that it's something that is a goal, but that we strive for, but we know that not every project is going to be able to reach those. It's a way to monitor the energy consumed in all our buildings. So we did our first submission last year for it, and it is going to the buildings that we are currently designing, but also tracking and monitoring some of the buildings that we did in the past. At this time, we also started using Cove Tool, which is also a nice tool that to be used within the office in conjunction with our mechanical engineers, but sort of usually before we start working with them to do some early energy modeling and carbon calculations. And then this project here that you see here is a study that we were doing for a building feasibility for a building close to Union Station here in New Haven. And we then imagined it as a mass timber, and what could we do with sort of the maximum height allowable by code. So this would be mass timber and all electric. And then finally, this year, just one of our future project is this small saltwater research lab. So again, this will be ideal in that sort of the water category and looking how that works. But how else are we going to be approaching this on a sustainability level? We have not had our sustainability charrette for this as yet, but we're really looking forward to doing that and see what would be the best ways to design to and create metrics for.
Now, I do want to add a couple of nuggets, Karen, and it's the fact that throughout this journey, you were picking up some awards.
Yes, and that was a nice sort of byproduct, hopefully. But I thank you for reminding me, because it's interesting about awards. Different states are taking on the frameworks as the as sort of a guiding principle for awards. And you mentioned that you got to know the frameworks because of that as a juror. I also was a juror for New Hampshire's awards this year, and yes, using the frameworks and a set of metrics is now being adopted more and more.
Yeah, because
Wow, look at that. This is awesome. So now I have to come after that. Come on, Karen. But really, that's what I was saying. I hope I didn't really spoil much. But look, the journey was really awesome, Karen. And I want to comment on the fact that your journey, you were always pursuing sustainability throughout the whole thing. You were always pursuing this with the certifications. So it was already inherent in your process, and the tools helped you. Like, you were acquiring all these tools. So really cool stuff, and I hope everybody took note on all of those tools that were being implemented. So now, taking you to Flo's journey, right? 2024. Not as robust when it comes to the results as Karen's, but really both of them, you're gonna get a lot from this. How did I learn about this framework? So I was called for jurors for the residential awards in 2022 for kind of the New England BSA awards, and I get selected, and I get presented this thing that looked very overwhelming, and I had to actually provide points for each one of the categories for each one of the projects. We as designers and architects, we always love aesthetics. That's really the beauty of, that's what's made history for the profession, right? The aesthetics of things and how they look. So now how they perform is actually added into the mix. And there were projects that I loved so much, but we couldn't give them any points because they didn't address the framework. They didn't address all of these elements. So it was sad. There were projects that were sad, that were really worth any award in any other scenario, in any other case, but sadly, they were not addressing those. So the ones that got, we then give some citations to them for some, one thing or the other, but we couldn't give the excellence award to anyone, which it was shocking. Nobody got it because nobody really embraced it. And we said, we got to set an example. This is not just something we're talking about. This is something we are going to implement across the board. So there were some net zero homes that got some citations and awards and all of that. But that was the first time I heard about it. Didn't know anything about it. Super overwhelming. And as always, Darwin gets into things that he doesn't know what he's doing, but we figure it out. So that said, I said, well, you know what? Let's throw the framework into our process somehow. Maybe there's a way that we can add it into how we work. And it's always aspirational. And I start just sprinkling the words framework throughout all of our office meetings. And I start mentioning it a little bit so that people get used to this thing. And eventually it's like, well, yeah, that's what we do. But we didn't know how to go about it. So, we posted a post with this tool saying we're going to start doing this because we wanted to say it to the world that we're going to do this, but we just didn't know how. So the steps were, well, let's meet with senior management at the office. And within senior management, let's talk to them about why this is important, what we believe about it, why we care about it. I just came from DC, where I got the Young Architect Award, and I saw all of the Code 10 awards, and I was like, we can be up there. You know, this is not just for me, Darwin, with his ego. It's about the next generation of architects. It's about the young generation of architects. And I want to make sure that they get up there and get rewarded. So we got to get it and apply this. So we talked to all of them, and the answers we got were, okay, sounds good. How do we get paid for it? That was the first one. How do we get paid for it? 2, who's going to train us? We don't know any of this stuff. We know how to do buildings, but we don't know all of these 10 elements and how we can measure them. Who's going to train us? That was another one. And the last one was, how do we actually do it? So being trained to know a concept is one thing. Applying it to the clients that we already have, that we're going to have to kind of move the needle towards that direction with them, that's going to be hard. So the answers were very straightforward. Well, not really, but the first thing that we did was, let's embed it into our contract. That's how you get paid for it. Let's tell the clients all of our projects apply the framework for design excellence. They come with that. Just like a car comes with 4 tires and an engine, these projects will come with the framework for design excellence here on. And if you want to know more, click here. You can read more about it. And the contract says, and our design team has pre-selected some items that we believe align with your project. So, because we don't want to just impose the 10 principles on people randomly, we want to make sure that, you know, as we connect with them and listen to them, we have to listen to them, we put the ones that resonate with the project the most, that we believe are going to be the most applicable. Some others may become evident as we design, but we added it there. We also added a line item called Framework for Design Excellence Research Fee. So there's a fee within our contract that's already embedded in there. If they ask about it, they should have already known about it, because we tell them throughout the whole process we're talking about this. One thing, this sets us apart from the competition. If anybody else is not doing this, we are set apart. We are doing something a lot more conscious than others. So we kind of also trying to figure out how to sell it, because a lot of our clients are minority clients, small developers. They don't know much about this stuff. So we want to make sure that we educate them, sell the service, which ultimately will bring the results. For training, we decided to connect with a lot of industry peers, friends, representatives that talk about solar, that talk about the skin of the building, the performance of the building, and we are inviting them to talk to us and recording all of our lunch and learns. But the lunch and learns are not just, somebody's gonna bring us some lunch and we're gonna enjoy it. No, it's all methodically selected to align with the framework. So prior to them coming to talk to us about their products, we want them to talk to us about their products as it relates to this framework. That's it. So when they come talk to us, and that becomes a training. Thankfully, our YouTube channel is getting a lot of traction, and other people, not just the internal staff, watch this and learn about the framework. So now we're preaching to the choir, preaching to everybody. Everybody's picking it up, and it's becoming more and more the thing that, just like the car comes with 4 tires, our buildings should come with the framework. That's it. I wouldn't be surprised, and maybe I'm preaching already for the future, that there will be a certification for the framework, that there is an emblem that says this project applies framework. Somehow, maybe I'll be the first one putting the plaque outside. But that's how we train them, right? And then how do we do it? So how do we do it? We had to go back to our process. And I hope every firm owner or every firm company that's here has a clear process. If you don't, you should work on that. We always talk about process, but often people don't apply it. So Flow Design has a 4-step process. We don't do anything until a contract is signed and executed and a deposit is paid. Then we start the party with step 1, understanding the state of the union, the realities, all the things that we know to be true within the site. And vision is the big picture. What's the target? What's the goal? What's the direction? What's the North Star for this project? What's the thing that we're going to measure the success of this building against? And then step 3 is when we actually test all of those concepts and ideas and generate design options. And lastly, step 4 is where we actually implement it in a building permit set or construction set. So, okay, that's our process. Thinking, where would this apply? Well, envision. So we decided to add it as part of our step 2, and we generated a template that we sent to all of our clients and say, here's our envision template, fill in all the information that It all needs to be cohesive with the initial contract. Otherwise, it's another project. But it has to be cohesive. But select some of these guys so that we can some of these framework elements so that we can validate the initial information from the contract that was already signed and compare it. Maybe there's something else that they care about that we didn't know, and they start selecting it and looking at it. So that way now we begin to implement it within our process, and there's a research that's going to go into how we apply that at the design stage. Well, then we had to do something else. We had to involve everybody, because flow is one goes, everybody goes. So to do that, we decided to do a poll and say, wait a minute, we need to pick champions and superheroes and people that care about one of these subjects more than others, and they can be the person that leads it, right, and teaches it. So some of the framework trainings that we have are done by them. They did a survey, they told us why they care about X, Y, and Z, and then we pair them together. So we have, 3 folks that love the ecosystem, Spar, one that loves the integration. It's funny, integration, design director loves the integration. So equitable communities, and we pair them all together. But also we reward that. It's like, okay, you're gonna be doing this research, because they look at me like, okay, our projects are already fast, they're not that well paid, and you are now adding another whole thing that I have to do? Well, yeah, but we also reward them. We say, listen, there's an incentive to do this, there's a bonus to do this, there is Celtics tickets, hey, Celtics champions, so that people get enticed. Nobody does nothing for something for nothing. There's a trade. So, nobody wants to go back to school after they finish, right? So we're kind of sending them back and say, listen, we got to learn about these things and you got to teach it. So for that to happen in a very cohesive way, we had to institutionalize that into our handbook. Our handbook, which is the first thing anybody that works at Flow gets when they get hired, talks about the framework. It's part of our mission, it's part of our vision, it's part of our DNA. So now it made it into the ecosystem. It made it into the way we work. And it turns out that we weren't that far off. We just found names to things that we were always trying to do, just like Karen was always trying to do sustainable buildings. They just have a name for it. Design for energy, right? Design for this. So now we have it all into our handbook, and it's become part of our culture. But we can't do it all alone. So we understand that, our staff members can only do so much, or trainings can only do so much. We need to involve everybody. So on our trainings, we have trainings with contractors. On our trainings, we have trainings with the owner. On our trainings, we have partnered with material reps, and we've sent them an entire survey that says, prior to sending me any of the materials that you have, look at them through the lenses of this framework for design excellence. And we were cataloging the reps that we talked to in relationship to the things that have the most impact within our buildings. And like say this envelope of the building, well, the reps need to talk to us about how all of this stuff is made. What elements within the framework do you believe they resonate with? And then our design team is gonna corroborate that, vet it, and make sure that it actually is true. But it's helping us be more digested a little easier, because we don't want to randomly start studying materials. We want to make sure that we have a connection with the reps. Where do they come from? So that's helping us. And now the framework is no longer this thing that at the beginning I wanted to insert into our process. It's part of our DNA. It's part of our culture. It's part of everything that we do. It's part of the way that we talk about buildings and design within the office. And it's one thing that it is really doing is giving us agency back as an architect, because some of our drawings said flooring to be determined by owner, exterior siding to be determined by owner. There were things that said to be determined by owner. Now we no longer have that. Now our drawings say, here's the basis of design for all of our projects. Whether you like it or not, that's what we're doing it with. That's what we're starting with. It's a little bit of a Trojan horse, because some of our developer clients are lazy. They may end up actually applying all of the things that we asked for, right? They won't even see the price tag until after it's too late. So now we all are inheriting a sustainable, cohesive project that is excellent, right? So that's the goal. That's the the toolkit that we're generating, and that's how we've been doing it at Flow Design Architects. So now that was a lot. But what's next, right? What's next, right? Two completely different journeys in a certain way. Funny that we both stumbled upon that in 2022. But what's next? What's next for Patrick King Architects?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to talk to, have some time for a Q&A for everyone to hear what others might be thinking of. But for us, it's what are our metrics? Like, what are the things that are important to us, and how do we measure them? And net positivity, and so beyond sort of net zero, it's how do we actually create buildings that are generating more energy than consumed, and using carbon calculations to also make decisions.
What's next for Flow? Kind of a quick story. I bought this building. This is my house 2 years ago or so, and I walked into the place and looked at these radiators, which I hate, and I hated the smell of oil, and I hate the bill for oil too, and the truck coming outside. I hate it a lot about fossil fuel. So I said, take all of those radiators out. Juan Carlos, Pedro, come over here. Let's do it. Let's do this. Heavy, very heavy to take them out. So we took them out. Then the winter's approaching. And the kids are like, Daddy, how do we heat this place? And I was like, I have no idea. So I was actually looking for gas options. And I was like, oh, gas, probably that's easy. Maybe it's on the streets. Well, it turns out that it wasn't on the streets anyway, and I had to get a line. And I call Ezekiel, one of my HVAC consultants, and I say, hey, listen, we gotta get this done. He had never done heat pumps, but I told him, listen, this is the future. You might as well get started because this is the future, all electric. The code's changing, which he did. Massachusetts just went 1,000% on the code for the energy. So, and we ended up doing it. What didn't I like about it? I didn't like the energy bill afterwards. So I was like, but I had a roadmap. I knew this needed to be solar panels and all that stuff. But turns out when I call all my reps that deal with solar panels, my building was historic. Of course it was, and the roof had slate roof that needed to go before a board to get their slate off. So thankfully that process, we went through that process. The slate roof was taken down. The same solar company actually paid for that, included within my bill when it comes to that. And wow, on my fingertips, I see money coming in. Every day I look at my kilowatts hour. This is like my new game, my new tool. So I just installed it in August finally, and I had like a $4 bill at the end of August. That's amazing. Just a $4 bill. And I actually turned it on August 10th. So there were 10 days of that month that I didn't get paid for. So, that I didn't have. So now, this is how we sell it to the clients. This is how we do it. You have to actually do it head on first. Just jump right in. That's the way to go. And then we'll figure out how we do it. Isn't that what we do as architects? We will figure it out. So thank you guys for this, and I hope this was helpful, and we're looking forward to your questions and connecting.
That was great. Thank you both. If everyone can put any of your questions in the chat, I'll pick them up. Before we get to questions, I'd like to put out a pitch in here for the Small Firm Exchange. I think everyone can see here the benefit of getting engaged with the Small Firm Exchange, SFX, and how you can meet and engage and learn from other amazing architects across the state and country, like Karen and Darwin. So if you are so inclined, I would encourage you to get engaged with the Small Firm Exchange.
And one thing, I just dropped a quick survey there to tell us how we did. I really like feedback. It's all about, and if you want to stay in touch with us, with me, I can connect you with Karen. You can click on that link there, and you can, tell us how we did and how we can improve. That's it. Life cycle calls, right? Getting the feedback, going around, right? So that's good.
Great. So the recording will be available in a few weeks online. Darwin will make sure we get you that information. Okay, first question. All this takes a lot of time. How do you allocate time and money to complete this information? Like so many standards, we often hear that clients want the architect to do all these things, but don't want to spend the time or the money to get a project certified or do anything that spends more money. How do you cover the cost with your staff to do this work? Clients see dollar signs when there are programs and terms like excellence and would rather not spend the money. How do you work around that?
Karen, you want to take that? Or
I can take it partially. Yeah, I know, Darwin, you have a great answer because it is sort of a part of your contract work, and you've sometimes assigned a fee to it. Other than that, I think it's also using this framework as a way to think about and talk about excellence with clients. And it's not every project that will be able to take on the framework and really going to a number of metrics and a lot of study. But if we are, as architects, armed with those concepts and we already understand them and we can work with them, sometimes it does become part of the way that you work. So all to say, it is something that is an investment in time to begin with. And for us, we've never, tried to add fees to it. So we're just taking on sort of bit by bit. It's been 2 years, and we're sort of slowly getting there. And we have yet to convince someone to really take it on with all the metrics involved. But we use parts here and there, and we sort of almost not sort of on the sly, we try to insert some of these concepts within our designs without necessarily having to charge more for it, I guess, is the answer.
So the way we look at it, Flo,
Yeah.
it's basically an investment, not just on the owner and the main stakeholders, but it's an investment also on our staff members. So I look at it as the fees that we add there is just subsidizing this thing, but I want my staff members to get their superpowers, to use their superpowers and grow. Not everybody, my end goal is that everybody within my office gets licensed and become a licensed architect, but if they just happen to become really excellent at the design for energy, and that's a tool, that's not like a new career path that they could even take on. So these tools are an investment on their future, while also the owners are going to end up with a better result and a better product. So we're balancing it out so that it's not like the project itself is paying for it. All of the cost comes from the client. It's a share cost. And then there is a price. There's a price on investing on your staff members. There's a price on investing on the project itself. The client needs to know that. But there's also a price to leave a legacy, right? So if I put a price tag on that, that's big. I want to be remembered as a guy that applied these principles in the office, that applied these principles and left a better community. I won't even be here to hear it. But if someone can say, yeah, that building is super awesome, sustainable, equitable, all this, I'm like, yes, I'm going to be smiling from my graveyard. So there's a price for that. Right? So you have to figure out how to insert it. And there is levels of engagement. I call that, levels of service, levels of engagement. You can, small, medium, or large. If you can only do one thing, but every step is a good step within the right direction, right? Even if it is a little bit. You may stay within your good lane. Listen, I only care about these 3 principles. I will be applying these 3 principles, and that's all I can afford to do. Do what you can, but just doing nothing is just not an option.
That's great. Next question. It is great how you are including the framework in your contract scope. Has the AIA updated their professional practice manual and guidelines to include design excellence programs, methods, and scope? Do either of you know?
I do not know.
I don't think he has.
Question.
Yeah, I'm so active within the AIA, but I don't think he has, mainly because of the cycles of the Handbook of Professional Practice and how it gets republished and written. So this 2022 right came out, so it's like the way it recycles. But they should. Maybe somebody's taking note, but yeah, they should.
Right.
Good question.
Darwin, are you open to sharing your office manual?
Absolutely, I am open to sharing my office manual. That's not a problem. Yeah, that's not a problem. There's no secrets there.
Okay, I guess I have to reach out to Darwin for that. Next question. For Darwin, how much time did it take specifically to set up the guidelines within your contracts, delegate champions in your office, and implement these guidelines? This seems like it would be challenging for smaller firms while still maintaining their workload.
So I'm a small firm owner. I understand that. We're just starting that journey, as you see, right? 2022 2024 right now. So we're yet to see the results of those steps. But it was just that process, meeting with the staff members and equipping each one of them. Not all of them have been trained yet. We're just getting these trainings around. But there are projects that we're actively applying it on. There are projects that we're only applying one or two things. The key is to ensure that you have a central database that everybody is fed into, a central training system on YouTube or videos that everybody's fed into that too, and ensuring that there's continuity to that. Adding it into the contract, it was because the team members said, who's paying for this, right? Like it needs to add more time, so you got to add more money to it. So it is exactly as you saw it. It's that process. So we started it. I guess if you go to our Instagram, when we published that image with the framework for design excellence, that's when we officially started it, literally the same day. So, and this is where we are at right now. So you can kind of see where we're at right now.
That's great. Are there any last questions? I don't see any in the chat. I think that's all we have. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I will see you both shortly on the SFX meeting.
Thank you, guys. Go to
Thank
the
you so
YouTube
much.
channel, share, and subscribe. All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so I think there's a lunch break now, and then we will be coming back a little bit later for the remainder of the East Coast Green.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.